hear me? Can anybody hear me? Hello?
I can hear you. This is Dale Nations.
Oh, great, Dale. Sorry, I had a computer crash all the phone, so I switched to the computers. I apologize to everyone. It is 10:04 a.m. on March 1st, 2024, and this meeting of the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is called to order. Roll call. Dale Nations, I heard you. You're there. Stephen Cooper, I see you.
I'm present.
Michael Conway, are you there?
I am here.
Wonderful. Bill, William Firebrand, are you there?
Commissioner Thorwald, I think Bill Firebrand wasn't going to join us this meeting. I think he had a conflict.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And we also have Assistant AG Adam Stafford with us. We have a quorum. Let's move forward. Is there any conflicts of interest? Hearing none, let's move on to item 2, administrator updates by Chris Schmidt,
Okay.
our administrator.
Good morning, Commissioner Thorwald and commissioners, and welcome to everybody on the call. Good morning as well. This item 2, administrator updates. Item A would be permit applications for the commissioners to vote on applications to drill. You may see on the agenda we have a series of applications to vote on. So we'll take each one up individually. There is a couple of permit applications for which there are spacing exception presentations and requests. And I know some of the representatives from those companies are here this morning to talk about those spacing exception requests. But the first item or group of permits that I would like to vote the commissioners to vote on or consider to vote on would be Pinta South Operating LLC. There's 3 permit applications for the well 22-1 state, 22-13 state, and 14-9 state. We have
This is
reviewed the permit.
Dale Nations.
Yes, Dale.
I'd like to interrupt this.
Yep.
I don't see any basis presented for these permits. There's no map covering them, no structure maps, not even a narrative. So how can we proceed without having that information?
I'm not sure we had that before. We're not doing the spacing. Are you talking about the spacing exceptions or are you talking about the permit applications?
Permit applications.
Okay. We have the applications and been through them and they're fairly complete. So I'm not sure
Well,
what you're asking.
the only map included in this application process does not even include the locations for all of these permits. These permits are all 19 and 20 north.
Okay.
There's no map showing the specific locations of each, and there's no structure map showing any justification for the locations. Now, maybe I'm out of line by saying this, but we need more information before we can decide to approve the permits, I think.
Okay. I don't believe, I believe that the permits the applications that we have were complete from an administrative and complete based on what rule would specify the requirements are to be met for submittals of applications. So that would be the application to make sure they have a bond in place, to make sure all of the supporting, like they have a survey plat, all of those that kind of information, what rule specifies. I'm not sure that rule specifies they need to include structure maps and any of those other kinds of supporting documentation. other than what they do give us. They do give us a drilling plan. They do give us, but I'm not sure, is it, are you saying that the commissioners need to review all of these permits ahead of time?
Well, it seems awkward to approve these drilling permits if we can't see the basis for them being presented. Now, I won't pursue this any farther, except to say that I like for example, the change of spacing for the 10-1.
Okay.
Which includes a detailed map showing the location of other wells within that 9 township and range block, and it also shows the basis, in this case, structure map for that. Now that's what I'd like to see, but I get your point that that's not necessary just for the action that's required today.
Okay.
So I don't know if any of the other commissioners are concerned about this, but that's something that struck me is I'd like to see what the basis for these permits are.
Okay.
This is Mike Conway, Commissioner Mike Conway. I certainly agree with Dale. I would like to see that sort of information herein as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris and Dale, this is Joe Dixon with the State Land Department. We have a little information on there too. We all 3 of those wells there are part of lease with Butler Minerals. That's number 13-117045. And we just applications for those. There's about 17 wells in the one geological field operation plan that we approved. The approval date of that was February 14th. But we had a little question too on that because there's 2 of the holes in section 22. So since there's 2 in one section, would that not require a spacing exemption also?
I don't think so. No, because the spacing, there was a spacing exception approved for some of these properties some time ago on I think it was, I believe, a 40-acre spacing. So so that's part of that. And so that's kind of why there wasn't a spacing exception required for this.
Okay.
But I guess I need to understand from the commissioners, are we going to change the process that the commissioners will need to review all of these permit applications ahead of time, ahead of the meeting and voting on them? Because that has not been the normal process before. It's been administrative staff to recommend or not to recommend approval of a permit application. So I would like to get on the record if the commissioners are going to now be part of reviewing all the permit applications ahead of voting on them.
In the past, this is commissioners all over the past. Commissioners historically, let's put it that way, historically, the commissioners did get copies of all of those documents to look at the meetings.
Okay. So do you wish to go through each one now?
Commissioner Nations, what would you like?
Well, if this is in conformance with the previously agreed upon procedure that the administrative staff has the ability to approve these without any additional information available to the commissioners, I would go along with this list today. But I'm not happy with it. I'll have to say that.
Commissioner Nations, at one of our previous meetings, we had given a lot of that power to our administrator, but we revoked that. So,
yeah, I agree. I understand that, and I like that idea. But I guess maybe because the overwhelming nature of the number of permits that are requested here kind of concerns me. So if we need to proceed, which I guess we do, with the approval of each and every one of these permits, then I will go along with it. But for future reference, I want to see more information about any permit request as to why.
Okay. I
Commissioner
see.
As to why as to why that location is specifically chosen, and of course the paperwork that you're talking about, the administrative staff has reviewed, I guess meets all the requirements for the offsetting wells and spacing and everything else. And if there's a need for spacing a deviation, I guess that's been covered by this discussion about the wells in section 22, PS 22. So I'd like to proceed with the basis of this as it is now. But again, for future development, I think we should have more information, or at least to be able to see the application process. Now, that's a lot of paperwork, I know, but they could also just be sent out electronically. Copies.
Well, I understand that, but I would need a list from the commissioners of what information you really want to see and what you don't want to see, because we have to make sure we understand that there's licensing timeframes that we have to adhere to. And so that's a 30-day administrative review of a permit, and then that's a 30-day substantive review of a permit. And so I need to understand then what the commissioners, what information you're requesting of the operators when they submit an application as supporting documentation for that application, because there is, according to rule, only a specific amount of items that they are required to submit for a permit application as a supporting documentation. So if the commissioners would like something different to review ahead of voting on to approve them, then I would need to understand what exactly are you looking for?
Well, I'm requesting specifically a map, township and range section map, with these permits entered on that map, showing the location. If there's no geologic basis for it, well, then I won't request that. But I do want to see a map with the location shown so that we can relate to the location geographically of the permits of other wells in the region. So such as this, now this would require a map, township and range map for the township, the 29. What is it? They're all 29 and what are they? What is it? 19 and 20. 19 and 20 township, but townships, and then the appropriate ranges that go along with those. That's what I would request.
Okay.
These need to be plotted. These need to be plotted on a map anyway, for inclusion in the well location map that's online. So that's my request, and I'll stop at that.
Commissioner Conway, what do you want? What do you want here? Commissioner Conway, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I agree with Dale. We certainly would need to see, we should be able to see a map of this. I would need to see I would like to see sort of explore some of these permits, one or two permits that if your staff could send them to me, just so I can look them over and get a sense of what is there and what I would like to see if it isn't there. Thank you.
Commissioner Cooper, what are your thoughts?
Mr. Chair, my thoughts are that perhaps we could hyperlink the application as part of the agenda so that the commissioners would be able to look at those documents prior to the meeting. And if they have additional concerns or requests, that they can get that information to the administrator. On the matter before us, on the third Pinodome South property, apparently it's in section 14, but there's no information in that listed in the box for that location. I have concerns about the timeframes that the commissioner has to act because of the application. If it were to go to a motion, Mr. Chair, I would agree to approve these and make it very clear that we send the information, the application to the commissioners to look at it. And if there is a concern raised by any commissioner, I would ask the administrator and the chairman to think about a special meeting, and I certainly would be willing to vote to reconsider if there is a concern about the documents presented to the commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. Any other discussion on this?
I do have a question for the commissioners. So in all of the times that the administrator, I understand the administrator previously had the authority to approve or after reviewing permits to approve those. And so now that we've kind of shifted that responsibility back onto the commission to approve permits, are you saying that now the commissioners want to review every permit application? Because the commissioners have not done that in the past, as far as I'm aware, and I've only been doing this for about 7 months. And I am following the process that has been followed in the past by other administrators. So I just want to make sure that I understand fully that now the commissioner wants to be involved. The commissioners want to be involved in the permit review process.
This is Commissioner Nations.
Go ahead, Commissioner Nations.
Yes, I see no reason to not make that available to the commissioners. Maybe the final authority could still be with the administration, but at least we would have the option of reviewing the location and the basis for presentation of a permit before we have to make any decision in an open meeting such as we are today.
Okay. I will make a note of that. So then as we get permit applications in, and it's not to say that the operators don't provide some of the information you're asking for. It just hasn't been the process by which we've been following, that the commissioners have reviewed permit applications ahead of their approval. It's always been on the administrative staff to review those permits for administrative completeness. Did they follow rule to submit all of the required documentation that's required in rule, and that they've and when we've done a substantive evaluation of it, does it pose any risks or other things like that some of the commissioners have brought out to their attention here and to our attention here this morning. But so then what we are going to have to do now is make sure that when we get a permit application in, that the commissioners have it for review.
Administrator Schmidt.
Yes.
It is my understanding what the commissioners are saying is that at the time that we have the public meeting and prior to that, that copies of those documents are sent along so that the commissioners can review it prior to a vote.
Right. Okay.
This is Commissioner Nations. We have never dealt with this before because we never had such a large application process, a number of wells being permitted. It's easy enough to review the documentation for one, but when you've got whatever number this is, looks like a 15 or 20, it's, well, in the first place, that's ignoring the geologic basis, which I think is the basis for the Oil and Gas Commission. We're not here just to, to review paperwork. We're here to determine how these permits apply to our overall plan for the utilization of the natural resources of the state. And so it goes beyond just the technical aspects of whether or not they check every box for the application process. We need to see some basis for the decisions that are being made.
I understand, and we as the administrative staff also do that technical evaluation as well. And so it's not just a checkbox process, but it's also a deeper dive, and that's what the substantive review does: is take a look at where they're drilling, what the purpose of it is, what commodity they're going for, can they be there, and any other impacts or risks that could pose, based on the geology or where the location of the well is going to be placed or whatever. So there is those technical considerations, but we are going to then
let me
have to modify our process on how we do permit reviews and how the commissioners are involved in doing that review.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting all of that. I'm suggesting that you include a map with this presentation to the commission, showing the actual location geographically of each of these applications, these proposed wells. That's only one step. You don't have to go through the whole process of asking us to review every document, and whether you crossed the T's and dotted the I's. But we want to see what the basis is for the proposal that a well should be drilled in a certain place. I'm not suggesting that the staff doesn't do any of that. I'm just saying that I want to see a map showing locations of these permits.
And I know we've had that in the past, the maps that we could look at. Let us move on.
Okay.
We are at number one, Penta South Operating LLC. Let's talk about each one of those.
What does the commissioners?
Administrator Schmidt, just fill us in on A and B and C.
Okay, the attachment shows where the wells are tentatively scheduled to be drilled, and they're helium wells.
Wait,
I'm not. Okay.
What attachment?
Attachment A. Attachment A shows the location, section, township, range, location of where those wells are, what county they're in, what well type that the application was submitted for, the type of well that was going to be drilled, the total depth, and what formations were the targets. So the Chinle is kind of above, more superficial, and then the Shinarump is the target formation for helium. All of these wells are all of these wells that you see on this table are all targeting the Shinarump formation for helium.
Yeah, and that's a good that attachment A is a definite improvement over what we used to have before you did this. But so you have gone that far, and it's a great improvement. But I still, when I look at that, I want to see where the PS 22-13 is located geographically on a map. Now, they should be able to do that without submitting all the paperwork, which is what you're suggesting, to the commissioners. We can limit it to that one addition to supplement what's in attachment A.
Okay. Well, I don't have that map right now at my fingertips. I know some of the permit applications do have some of that information that they submit as part of their application, but I don't have it all onto one map just yet for all of the permit applications.
Well, if we're going to vote on all of them, then we need to see all of the maps.
Okay, then we may not be voting on these today then. Because I don't have, are you talking about one summary map or all of the maps at all for each permit?
A map to cover the location of each permit. It can all be on one map.
Right, and what I'm trying, okay.
25 maps. So you just submit one map with the locations of all of the wells that we're going to vote on, the locations of those wells on that one map.
Okay.
And that doesn't
okay.
mean you've got to submit all the paperwork to every commissioner to oversee your decision process. I just want this one thing added, which supplements what you've already done.
Right. And
that's the map.
All I can say right now is I do not have a summary map that has all of the locations of all of these permit applications on there right now.
Well, I would suggest that we go ahead and we consider what you're presenting today, and then we will not insist upon having this map coverage until the next application process. I'd like to proceed on this and clear it so that the operators can proceed on their planning.
Right.
Gentlemen, let me jump in. This is Chairman Thorwald. Commissioner Cooper had made a suggestion, and also Commissioner Conway had made a suggestion on this, that they wanted to see these kinds of things. Later on in the agenda, we're going to bring up a special meeting anyway, and I'm just wondering, since we're going to have a special meeting, hopefully anyway, within the next week or 10 days, that if do we want to address it at that point? Do we want to move it forward as Commissioner Cooper had suggested, and send out the maps and see if there's anything, in other words, a conditional approving this? Commissioners, how do you want to proceed with this?
This is Frank. This is Mike Conway. I like Steve Cooper's suggestion. I think it would be great to see this material and then come back in 7 or 10 days and vote on it.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Cooper.
Yes, sir.
It's my preference to move forward today. With regards to the special meeting, I hope that they don't look at March 15th. I have a date there that I cannot move. I would also suggest that perhaps for the next meeting, regular meeting or special meeting, that perhaps the administrator and the chairman meet with our legal counsel to discuss this issue, and perhaps there is some streamlined process that can be done that will take care of all the concerns of the commissioners in this matter. I hesitate asking for advice today because I think this is probably something that needs to be thought about by the parties and then discussed.
So you're not suggesting we go into executive session to get legal advice at this point?
That is correct. I think in fairness to our legal counsel, I think we need to give them a little time to basically do a little research and look at the history of how we got to this point in the road, and then give us some advice on how we should proceed in the future.
I agree with that. This is Commissioner Nations.
Adam, what is your thoughts? Adam is our assistant AG.
Thank you, Chairman Thorwald. Yeah, if you want to have a discussion of what's required, we would need to go to an executive session for me to give you legal advice. Right now, it seems the issue is, do because how it works is the applicants submit the applications to drill. The administrator reviews those applications and then makes a recommendation to the commission, and the commission issues the permits. So what's required for the permit application is described in rule. I think primarily rule. There may be some statutes that require certain things in the rule, but the rules drive what's required. Now, if it seems the issue is that the commissioners want to see more about how the sausage is made, so to speak, about what goes into the administrator's decision. Is that is that correct? Is that what the commissioners would like to see more of before they vote on an application? The recommendation of approval from the administrator, they would like to see more of the underlying information.
Chair, may I respond to that? Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Cooper.
Yes, thank you. From my standpoint, I'm not interested into it. I would rather have our Attorney General tell us this is the process and this is what has to be followed, so that we as a board can determine what documents that we think we would need to see to make a decision. Because in fairness to the other board members, we're asking to vote to approve permits that we've not seen any application on, and we're relying on staff to tell us that they were done appropriately. And I think if we just hyperlink the applications, I think we'll resolve this issue.
Adam, do you believe you're prepared to go into an executive session to talk about this at this point?
Yes, I'm prepared to go into executive session, talk about it. I may not have all the answers the commissioners want at this particular juncture in time, but that's certainly an option to go into executive session to discuss it, to get legal advice.
Do you recommend that we wait, or do you want to do it now? What is from your legal perspective?
I think we should probably go into executive session and have the discussion. I mean, we may not completely resolve the issue, but we could have a better understanding from getting legal advice in executive session, and then you could come back into regular session and decide, and then act or not act accordingly.
Yes, I would be up for that. I would like to go into an executive session because I do want to get some advice from Adam on things too.
Do we have a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Cooper. Although I don't really want to go into executive session, I am willing to make the motion that we go into executive session for legal advice.
I will second that motion. Could you set it up so we can go into executive session, please?
Did we take the vote on the executive session?
Commissioners, Commissioner Cooper, Commissioner Firebrand, he's not here. Commissioner Conway, Commissioner Nations, are you there?
This is Commissioner Cooper. I am here.
Okay, Commissioner Nations, Commissioner Conway.
I closed the breakout rooms. It may take a second for Commissioner Nations to come back.
Okay, Commissioner Nations, are you here yet?
I think he was calling in, so he may have had a problem with the phone or something, maybe in switching.
Yeah,
Possibly.
I think he is not able to move out himself. So he should be automatically kicked out any second now and brought back to the main room.
Should I be here? It's David.
Hello?
There's Dale.
This is Commissioner Nations. I'm a little confused about what's happening.
There was a motion and a second to go in executive session, but there was not a vote. The commission needs to vote to go in executive session before we actually go into executive session.
I move that we go into, I second the motion, third the motion to go into executive session.
Procedurally, this is Commissioner Cooper. Procedurally, I believe the chair should call for the votes. I did see that Commissioner Conway was back on the line, but his camera and his phone were muted, his audio.
Ron?
Hello?
Commissioner Cooper?
I'm here.
And Commissioner Nations?
Yes, I'm here.
And Commissioner Conway?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Conway said he was having trouble with his audio and he was going to try to restart the meeting.
Well, I got kicked out too, so we'll just do a roll call when he's on again.
I'm back on.
Okay, great. I apologize, everyone. Did not, in my enthusiasm, I did not take a vote on going into executive session. We have a first from Commissioner Cooper, a second from myself. All in favor of going into executive session, say aye.
Aye. Nations?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? We have our motion and it's approved to go into executive session. You can provide that link again.
Looks like the rest of the gang's all here. Joe, I'm sorry I haven't been attending some of these. You know, you're You're still supposed to be retired. You know that, don't you? And Deidre, I got to say, this is all your fault.
It's not my fault. It's you guys that put nine applications in that made them confused.
They have seen all of mine 2 years ago. I haven't changed a thing, and I'll swear to it on
I
oath.
know, I know. And what's really, I mean, what's really frustrating to Chris is all of this stuff that they're asking for is in every application. So it's like,
The thing that changed that Dale's bringing up though is they used to get all this information, a week before, so that they actually had the information to look at. Also, that seems to have changed. I haven't been around, but
yeah, but I think that was only in
yes.
connection. That was only in connection with spacing applications that were exceptions.
I'll
Because
jump in.
From originally they got it all, originally when we were
Oh.
submitting things and
Well,
drilling
there's
all
Marta,
these
she
wells,
knows.
we gave them
Yeah, I was
everything.
like, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Yeah,
Marta.
Yeah, I'll speak to the fact that they've only ever requested the spacing exception ones. So I thought this was a little bit out of the ordinary for sure.
I can tell you historically, when we first started drilling all this stuff, 6-7 years ago, that they got it all, originally. So because we had a lot of discussions about the whole confidentiality thing, about what should we show on the public meeting, what
Right.
should we not,
Right.
those types of things. So they originally got it all, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've given them what they've asked us to give them, and I think that there's just some confusion about, I mean, for example, on the spacing on your Shinnerump wells and our Shinnerump wells, there's a 40-acre spacing that's been in place for, I don't know, 7 years, 6 years,
Yeah, it got it a long time ago.
long time ago.
Set up.
But I mean, I understand that, and that's included in the in the drilling applications. It says what acreage is dedicated to each well. But again, I mean, it is a lot of paper for each application with the number of plats that there are and the, the geologic rationale is in there. And but it's a lot of paper when you look at it on a permit by permit basis, I guess.
I think I think all Dale wanted was an index map.
I think you're right.
Yes.
Showing the new locations and the old locations, that it make perfect sense that they're right in amongst each other and they're just obvious.
But I mean, there's an index map in each application.
Yeah, one nice one that would have them all, and with or without geology, we could come up with some geology out of the public record. But I think that all Dale wanted was a map.
Where are we at? Where's it at? That's really all it was.
Let me just for fun, let me just show you what's in our application. Oh, can't do it. So there is, I mean, it's a map that shows all the existing wells. It shows the permitted application wells. And that's one of the maps that's in each one of these applications.
Perfect. Yeah.
But anyway, but I mean, Chris didn't know that he had to have all that at hand. So, because I mean, we just did this in January. And they never looked at a single map or anything else. They just approved the recommendation of the administrator. So it's just a new process that they want to have. I understand it, but it's just would be good to know before we started.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why it happened, but I know they revoked some of the delegations that had been given to past administrators. And
yep.
I know the details.
Right. It just, I mean, it slows us down because if we have to wait another 6 weeks, each time we have a permit application. I mean, I get it. Some places it takes longer than that, but we were a little spoiled working with Marta and Dennis and other people that reviewed the application and then were able to give us an approval. So now we have to wait up to 6 weeks to get an approval.
I sure hope you don't have to. I mean, I actually have these wells plotted on a map. That's kind of like what you're saying, and they're just, they're no brainers. They should be, approved quite easily. The exploration well is a little more interesting, but I think they have some supplemental material for that one.
Well, the one with the spacing exception for Pinadome. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's to the west. Yeah, Pinadome operating, yeah.
Pinadome operating, yep.
Just a
Yeah.
heads up, guys. We are still live on YouTube. I'm gonna see if I can edit this conversation out, just for you, out of respect for you guys.
Okay,
But just a heads up.
We all hold hands and go to the
we'll
same
just
bar.
be
It's okay.
quiet. Thanks, Brooke.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of stuff that hasn't already been laid out there geologically and everything now anymore. So
Yeah, there's plenty of references. Yeah, plenty of references.
I do find it interesting that it's kind of some of the same issues that we worked through all the way back with Dennis, and about what does need to be sent out first and second, and how they got it down to where, okay, the administrator is going to review the plain Jane stuff and only the stuff that's that's more, let's say, administratively risky or detailed about offsets and exceptions, location exceptions, things that haven't been ruled on should be looked at in more detail. But
yeah. Yeah, I even saw some surprising materials in the meeting announcement attachments. I guess in support of the the exploration well. They even stuck in an article about the Holbrook Anticline.
right, I saw that.
But yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. I've got a map on the Fort Apache through there, and there's no anticline at depth. Of course, big one. I'm sure there's some little ones, like they want to drill one. I don't have a map that shows those kind of details.
But I think they were only suggesting that even if they did delay, it would just be 1 week. It wouldn't be a 60-day delay. It's just.
Yeah, some kind of special session.
Frank's always offered that. Is like, if you're in a hurry, he'll call the special session for you. It doesn't have to wait to 60. It's just, it puts a burden on Chris if they're having to get stuff out they don't have a lot of time.
Well, especially now that everything can be on Zoom, it's
Yeah.
not that hard compared to getting a meeting together.
Yeah, we used to bring all the maps, lay them out on the table, and everybody sit around the table, before we got the Zoom deal. So
yeah, those are good meetings.
Hey, Tony, this is Joe Dixon. I thought you had retired.
No, you're the one that retired. I have never.
No, really.
I was in
Here I am
hiding.
I kind of missed our old meetings there with the land department, and then even at ADEQ, we had the.
I thought you had totally turned that over to David, and Mr. Haig had to deal with that, and you got to go to the lake there in Oklahoma. So
that's right.
We hired him back part-time.
there you go.
We need the help. We only got we got 4 people.
I can't imagine being in retirement anyway. I think I'd want to come back and work part-time or something. You can only fish so much.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. As long as I don't have to miss Jeopardy and Price is Right on TV, I'm good.
You can only go to Choctaw and WinStar, so many times before you have to come back to work and earn some more money anyway. So.
That's right.
You doing okay? Everybody doing fine?
Yeah, pretty good. I was just kind of curious too. Most all your wells over there are at the 8 of the 9 you got listed there. Those are all on the O'Neill lands. Did you have any?
All 9 of them. Yeah, all 9 of them are on the O'Neill. It's the same stuff we did 2 years ago and got extensions. And then finally, we got an agreement signed with everybody. Poor Jeremy wore out, wore himself out the last 2 years trying to get everybody over there on the same path, because we'd already done it 3 times, and this is This time it was just, there was a little more pushback from the permittees, but we finally got it. So ours is just the identical same stuff we submitted before, you know, the 9 wells that were approved. We're just putting them back in again. So it's
You might
been,
have the
that's been a
location
slog, I
one
can
on
tell
there.
you.
Yeah. I think I looked up the first one there, the 511, the way they've got that listed, that showed up just kind of right close to the Petrified Forest National Park there, just on the east side of it there a little bit there. So,
Yeah, well, you know, all that acreage, you know, on this stuff, even their 22 and all those just run right down the east side of the deal. We're actually on the east side of the highway, though. All of these are on the east side of the highway and over on the Navajo lands, or the Oneer lands, let's put it that way.
okay.
It's all Cimarex land, royalties underneath, but we got a farm out on it.
Do they have that one listed wrong then? That 511 well that's supposed to be.
It's 511 19 north, 27 east.
Yeah, they got 26 east in here. That's why I didn't think it was part of the Oneer
Nope.
lands.
No, he's got that listed wrong. It's 27 east.
27.
It's right. It's 1 mile east of that 6-13 well. So.
Yeah. I kind of wondered about that too, with all the other ones being over there. It seemed kind of funny that one wasn't.
Yeah, I think they got a typo on that one.
Yeah.
It's 27. It's 27 east.
Okay.
No, that would have been in the res now. I mean, in the park now, wouldn't it? I'm going to hang on.
Yeah, it was right on the border. It was the first section outside of the park boundary there, in 26 anyway.
Turn my land on here.
They let you have a land map, Tony?
No, I have yeah, see, that's actually section 5, I believe, is inside the park now.
Was it inside? Okay.
Maybe, I think, well, hang on, let me get they let me play with all kinds of stuff, Deidre. I mean, you'd be surprised.
I don't know, it was either right inside or right outside. I don't remember. I thought it was right outside.
I gotta go punch a different button here on my Google Earth just to make sure I got the right thing going here.
Yeah, I just came back on. Yeah, I've got 1926 section 5 just inside the park.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
looks like-
gonna
yeah,
say
I
it's
think
1
it's
mile
about-
inside the park, but that's a wrong deal. That's a error. They're gonna have to correct that on the record on his attachment A. It's supposed to be 27 east, that 511 is.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at another map, it looks like he does this the first section
Yeah.
right inside the new park boundary there.
Yeah, the first one right through the gate there. So.
Yeah.
No, but that 511 we've got back over there on the east side of the highway. We will be submitting another one to drill back to the Fort Apache, Joe, and David. That's in section 34 again. So we'll try for another one to go down and test that Fort Apache. That'll be coming probably next week. So.
I know in the past, a lot of people had problems dealing with the own your lands there just because it's hard to figure out who is really in charge as far as, the tribes are concerned.
Hats off to Jeremy. I mean, my God, he's been fighting that for 3 years now, and 3.5, and he finally got everybody to hold hands for a second or two and get a document signed.
Yeah. We got about I think maybe about 2 or 3 dozen split estate sections there in the Oneer lands where the the land still has the mineral and oil and gas rights and stuff there, but not the surface.
Well, we were going through that the other day, and it was kind of like we kind of noticed that some of those that everybody was saying was Navajo minerals was actually state minerals, according to the courthouse. So
Yeah. I haven't checked in a while. I think almost all of our split estate lands in there already have a lease on them with somebody.
yeah.
Hey, Jim, this is Brian Goatee with a survey. Have we met before? I recognize you, but I just can't remember if we've met. Right. I guess no one can hear me.
Oh, no, I can hear you. Just Joe went on silent.
Oh. What are we waiting for here? I'm not sure. Did they have to break?
They
went on,
executive session.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure how long it's going to go. So I guess we just have to wait.
It seemed a fairly contentious issue there. So, Jim, are you going to take Stephen Cooper's place here now?
I'd like to, but unfortunately, the present administration is Democratic, and I'm not, so I don't know how that's going to work out.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, I'd very much like to. Say, Tony, I was just going to ask: is that 34/7 well about the get out of confidentiality period? I've never seen it, of course.
Yeah, I know.
Should be.
Huh.
Dale worked on a couple of projects that they talked about there. I know in years past, but that's been a while. So
yeah.
Just have to recuse yourself from consideration there.
No, I was just, mentioning, I think many years ago, I mean, the whole issue was about sending this stuff around. We sent it around directly to the commissioners because a lot of it was to be held confidential for those 2-year periods, right? And then I think now that's, because there were so many companies out there just looking, for stuff, but I think everything's pretty well settled down on all that now. And there's not a whole lot of surprise anymore. If people go back and look at the public record or look at it, most of geology's been laid out there, and it's no big surprises. We're all generally shin rump chasing those channels. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, that big study you released for the 40-acre spacing reduction was that's packed full of good stuff.
Right. Yeah. Needs to say when we did that the first time around, it's kind of like keep it confidential, keep it confidential. Now it's all like now it's history.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the 34-7 well, because Tony, because haven't seen it yet, and my regional maps really don't show very much Fort Apache there. 10, 15 feet above the Naco, so there's more carbonated than the Naco probably. But I didn't think the Fort Apache is going to be very thick there.
But yeah, it's 15, 20 foot of dolomite right at the base of it.
Okay. Yeah, the carbonate section. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you got that much. I hope it does you some good. It seems like it's hard to keep gas inside the Fort Apache.
Yeah, well, the only thing we've got going there is we are on top of the Pentadome, and it's on the very top, so we got structure working for it. So it's hard to find structures, so much where things are trapped in.
Oh yeah, well, even over at St. John's, they got gas in the Fort Apache and kept trying to complete it, but it ended up contributing more water than it was worth. In the later completions, avoided it. Just completed farther down.
Yeah, there's depending on where you're at as to whether there's enough seal in between that Big Butte A or Naco or Amos Wash or whichever one you're sitting on.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. I always wondered if by the deepest levels in the well, that structural axis actually would have shifted a little bit, kind of, with a monoclonal model.
Yeah, we got a couple of seismic lines across the Pentadome, that we ran a long time ago, and it pretty well stays almost lined up, on the structure, on that structure anyway.
Yeah. Oh, I remember you never showed me that line. I wanted to watch that. I wanted to see that line once.
Tight hold you,
Of course you did. Yeah, right up for that a little bit.
Andrew, how you been? Haven't talked to you in a while.
Oh, hey Tony, how's it going?
Great.
Yeah.
You going to be available to go play Wellside Geologist when we get back to drilling?
Yeah, maybe. Depends on when the timing works out. So,
Be hollering at you.
all right.
How's Gunnison?
Just cold and snowy. It's good.
Snow's good for the tourists.
Yeah. Yeah.
They ever finish the roads around the lake over there? Or they're still working on them?
Still working.
Make sure everybody is here. Commissioner Conway,
I am here.
Commissioner Nations, Commissioner Cooper. You're on mute.
I'm here.
Has Commissioner Nations joined yet? Commissioner Nations?
I just closed the breakout room, so you should get forced back out into the room.
Thank you.
Yep, just a second.
Commissioner Nations, are you with us?
You've got 10 more seconds until the breakout room closes for good. So you should be back in a second.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Commissioner
This
Nations.
Commissioner Nations, my battery, I didn't expect to be on the phone, so my battery's running low. So when that runs out, I won't be part of the meeting.
Then we will not have a quorum. We will not be able to go further once that happens. Let me ask this.
Chair, I believe we will still have 3 members if he goes, and we will still have a quorum.
Oh, okay. We will still have a quorum. Good. Thank you.
I'll stay on as long as I can.
Okay. Let me ask the first question of the commissioners. Do we want to move these items forward on the agenda to vote on them and review them, or do we want to get this information that we've asked for from staff and do this in the special meeting we were talking about? What does everybody want to do?
Mr. Nations, I've said in previous statements that I think we should go ahead and approve these permits on the basis of their presentation now, and then just deal with the additional request later.
Commissioner Conway?
Yeah, I think that's fine for now.
Commissioner Cooper?
Mr. Chair, I would agree, and if I could impose on the administrator one more time, that he would just state on the record that staff has done all that is necessary to bring these matters to us for our approval.
Commissioner Schmidt, do you want to respond to that, please?
Yes, I believe we have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmidt, do you want to go back to Penta South Operating LLC number 1A I1 on the agenda?
I1 Penta South. Yes, there were 3 applications up for the commissioners' vote to approve or disapprove. Would be for the 3 wells, as we had stated earlier, the 22-1 SD State, the 22-13 SD State, and the 14-9 SD State. We have been through the review. I have talked to the operator before. We do have representatives of the operator on the call, I believe. If the commissioners have any questions or concerns about the permit applications, but we have done I believe, a complete review, and I do believe that Penta South has provided everything they needed to justify approval of the permits.
And these approvals are for what? Just
for these 3 wells. These 3 wells for Penta South.
And what are they doing for the approval? What is their request for?
Drilling helium wells.
Very good. Commissioners, do we have questions? Would we want to hear from the operator?
This is Mike Conway. Chris, if there's a representative from Pinta South available, could they provide us with the location, township and range of the third well, which is the PS 14-9, which doesn't have a location here in table A?
Commissioners, this is Deidre O'Callahan, landman with Pinta South. The location for that 14-9 well is in the same township and range as the other two. It's section 14 of township 19 north, 26 east.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Any other discussion?
Chairman, this is Adam Stafford. None of these ones, the three ones you're considering, Pinta South, the ones listed under 1A, B, and C, none of those require a spacing exception, correct?
Correct.
No, right.
Okay, commissioners, do I hear a motion to approve Pinta South Operating System LLC Wells ID PS 22-1 SD State, PS 22-13 SD State, PS 14-9 SD State?
This is Commissioner Nations. I move, Frank, was that a motion?
No, that was asking if anybody wanted to make a motion.
Oh, yes, I move, this is Commissioner Nations, that we approve the drilling permit for Pinta South 22-1 SD State and PS 22-13 SD State and PS 14-9 SD State.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that. This is Mike Conway.
All approved, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Pinta South operating wells are approved. Administrator Schmidt, would you move on to item 2, Ranger Development?
Okay, item 2, Ranger Development. There's a series of wells here, and I want to get to the spacing exception for Ranger, their request ahead of the commission's vote on the other permits and this last permit as well. There's 9 of them. All 9 wells.
Administrator Schmidt, let's just move right on to I first.
Okay, then we'll go to this spacing exception, and so we'll move to the Ranger 31-7NS. All of these permits are renewal permits. These permits have been approved before. However, Ranger needs to do a spacing exception for the 31-NS, and I do believe we have 2 representatives on the call, or at least we did. I think Tony Hines and Kevin McQueen are here from Ranger to discuss the exceptions requests for the Ranger well number 31-7. And I think they were looking at an increased density plus the location changes, for the exception. So I would leave it to the commission or leave it to Mr. McQueen or Mr. Hines to present the justification and the rationale for the spacing exception for their permit application to the commission.
Mr. Queen, Mr. Hines, would you care to give your presentation?
Sure. This is Tony Hines with ICX. We have all of these wells, including I, with the spacing exception and increased density, have been presented before. This is the same information that was presented a couple of years ago. It's just taken us a while to get our surface use agreement with the Navajo, so nothing has changed from what was originally presented. I can put up a map if you would like, so that everybody could see it, if you actually have access on the Zoom, to show where the well is. 31-7 is going up dip just a little bit to the east from our 31-1 well. And it's just, okay, thank you. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. The 31-7 well is located here in section 31, 19 North, 27 East. And we have an existing well, the 31-1. We're going up dip just a little bit. We're going to take it to the Coconino, and the Coconino is on a 640 acre spacing, I believe. And so we would require an increased density, and it's just outside, I believe, the normal spacing for a 640 for the drilling unit. So it needs the location exception also for it. I would also like to point out on the list, the administrative list or the attachment A list, this well 5-11, I think there's a typo. It says 26 East. It's actually 27 East. All of the wells that we're going for, the same 9 that we had presented and were approved previously here in 19 and 20 North, 27 East on these wells.
I'm glad you finally got your approval from the tribe, the Navajo Nation, for that.
Yeah, I didn't have white hair before, for those that aren't here. So
it has been years. Commissioners, you have any questions? Hearing no questions, staff, what do you recommend on this?
Being that nothing has changed from the previous permit applications that were approved, I don't see any reason why there would be any recommendation, but not to approve them. So I would recommend approval.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the spacing exception for Ranger Development, Ranger 31-7 NS?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Not hearing any opposed, the motion carries. You have your spacing exception. Administrator Schmidt, do you want to go on to discuss A through H?
Yes, let's go back, commissioners, to all of the wells that Ranger Development has for consideration for permit approval now that we have the spacing exception voted on. So again, there is 9 permits up for your review. These permits were approved, roughly 2021 timeframe. And so really these are just renewal of permit applications, and not all of the information is consistent to what it has before, as Mr. Hines has spoken about. So I would recommend approval of all of the permits A through I.
Mr. Hines, do you have anything you want to talk about on that before we discuss?
Nothing else to add. It's been a long road, but we're finally there again.
Commissioners, any questions for any discussion on these? Not hearing any discussion, do I hear a motion to approve Ranger Development LLC A through H that's on the agenda?
So moved, Commissioner Nations.
Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Coop. I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. You have your approvals. Administrator Schmidt, do you want to move on to item 3, Pentadome Operating LLC?
Yes, commissioners, I would like to move to item D. The second part of the spacing exception requests on the agenda would be Pentadome's request for a spacing exception for the well 10-1-state, which is up for consideration by the commission for permit approval as well. But I would like to take up the spacing exception first, and I do believe we have Mr. Scheer on the call. At least I saw him before, and then potentially maybe another representative for Pentadome on the call. So Mr. Scheer, are you still on? Yep, there he is. You're muted, sir. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
There. Hello.
Mr. Shear,
Good
would
morning,
you
Chair.
make
Good
a
morning.
present what you would like to do here?
Yes, we'd like to get a spacing exemption. We found the optimal spot by both electroseismic and the geology. And we're concerned that if we move to a move off of that spot, we may not be in the optimal area to get the results we want. And so we're just barely beyond the spacing requirements, but we're asking for an exemption so that we can drill most optimally.
Do you have a map of that area?
Yes, it's included in the if you scroll on down, there's a map.
Yes, Commissioners. Attachments B and C should be your that you were provided should have all of the information that's on here, the map, sections, and all of the things supporting that request.
I see that. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, do you have any questions for Mr. Shear?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Cooper. I'd like to compliment the application for the thoroughness of their presentation materials for the board to review.
Thank you.
Chris and Frank and Bob, this is Joe Dixon from Arizona State Landing, and we had one question on this in the attachment letter, and there it refers to the site as being 1,467 feet from the west section line. The site we approved is the same distance from the east section line. And if you look at that little map that's on there, it looks like that should be from the east section line. So we want to make sure we are clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you are, yes.
Yes.
Okay. If it's from the east section line, we're okay with it. That's the site we approved, and we're good with that there. But if it's actually supposed to be from the west section line, well, that might be a different story here. So.
Right.
And I apologize at the very beginning. I did not introduce the parties from the Land Department, David Haig and Joe Dixon. Is there any other questions for Mr. Shear? Any discussion with regard to the spacing exception by the commissioners? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the spacing exception for Pentadome operating?
So moved. This is Mike Conway.
Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Cooper. I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the most spacing exception motion is carried. You have your exception. Administrator Schmidt, would you go back to the 3A?
Yes. So with that, Commissioners, thank you. With that approval of the spacing exception, I would like for the Commission's consideration to vote on the approval or disapproval of the Pentadome 10-1 state application.
This is Commissioner Nations.
Go ahead, Commissioner Nations.
I want to come in like Commissioner Cooper did, the thoroughness of this application. This is exactly what I like to see. And whenever it's possible to get that much information, it's good. Also, I think it's great that they're going to drill to the basement on this.
And I would, this is Chairman Thorold, I would like to agree with Commissioner Nations. I like this very much. Thank you for the presentation. Is there any questions or discussion? Do I have if none, do I have a motion to approve? Item I, excuse me, item 3A, PD 10-1 state, Pentadome.
This is Commissioner Nations. I move that we approve the drilling permit for PD 10-1 state.
Do we have a second?
Excuse me, Chairman, is it are you voting on the spacing exception or the drilling permit?
We're voting on the drilling permit. We've already voted and approved the spacing exception.
Okay.
We're voting on 3A, the permit, PD 10-1 state.
Chair, this is Commissioner Cooper. I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Conway, you're muted there.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. You have the permit. Before we go farther, I would like to, I'm concerned that I'm going to take something out of order. I want to make sure Dale Nations is on before we get to this. So I'm going to jump down to 4, Chairman Thorwald's report, item B. And it's only this one item that I want to take out of order. Commissioner Stephen Cooper has resigned and will be effective March 31st of this year. He has served with us for a very long time, close to 20 years anyway. And I just want to thank him for his service and tell him that he will be sorely missed. And I just wanted everybody to know that. And if there's any of the other commissioners that would like to say something to him, this is your chance.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Nations. Thanks, Steve, for all your very important contributions to our discussions, and we certainly will miss you.
Again, thank you.
I would second that and note that I've actually learned quite a bit from listening to and watching Commissioner for over the last year or so.
Mr. Chair, I've learned a lot from all the commissioners as to the technical issues that were beyond the scope of my training and everything, and I do appreciate that. I'd hoped at the end of the meeting I could say Elvis had left the building, but today it's not going to happen.
Okay, let us move back now to the regular agenda here to item C, well plug abandonment application, Desert Eagle Operating System, LLC. Administrator Schmidt.
Did you want to do the permit extensions for Pinto Dome first, Commissioner? Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to item B. Yeah, that's fine. No worries. And thank you, Mr. Cooper, for your service to the commission. And I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to work longer together on things, but I certainly appreciate all of your input and counsel while at least I was here or while you were here. So I just want to thank you for that. Yes, the permit extensions for Pinto Dome. Mr. Scheer did notify me there was 5 permits that were about to expire on February 17th. Mr. Scheer notified me in late January that he was aware that those permits were going to expire, and he was requesting 6-month extensions on those permits, I believe. And so we didn't have a chance to agenda until this meeting. So up before you is just to vote on extending permits. These permits were already approved back in August of 23. So I'm sorry. August of 23. So we are asking for, Pinto Dome is asking to extend those permits for 6 months. And I know the commission has extended them longer. I did ask Mr. Scheer if 6 months was okay for him, but he could address whether he may need some further time frame from the commission if that's required.
If we can go longer, that would be good. We're setting up right now for the 14-1 PR, and there's 17 miles of dirt road to get in and out of. We're taking 30 containers. Each of them we can only go about 6 miles per hour with in and out of there. So it would move in a 1 to 1.5 a day, and it takes some time to get these drilled due to the remote location. So if you could go more than 6 months, that would be helpful.
This is Commissioner Nations.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'd like to move to approve the extension to extend the permits for 1 year of wells 10-1 PR, 12-1 PR, 14-1 PR, and 14 state. I don't know what that 16-1 is at the end of that sentence.
That's another well.
Where is
Okay,
that?
16-1 state.
include the 16-1 in my motion then.
Any discussion? Do we have a second?
Mike Conway here. I second it.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, just quickly, can we approve up to a year statutorily or by reg?
Administrator Schmidt,
There's nothing that I know of in rule, Commissioner, that states the length of time that the commission can extend a permit. It just says that a permit extension would need to be requested and approved by the commission, but it doesn't specify. Typically, they have been about 6 months with reapplications after 6 months, but again, there's no time frame for doing so. And if I'm not mistaken, last meeting we did approve a 1-year extension for another operator, so there is precedent for doing that.
Thank you.
Assistant AG Stafford, is there any issue there?
You want to get legal advice on this, Chairman?
No, just did we did that the last time, didn't we? For 1 year.
I believe so. Yeah, I think there's nothing that specifically limits what the term of the extension should be. However, it may, because the initial term is only 6 months, it seems that the term should be, any extension should be the same as the original term, subject to being, renewed again before that second 6 months is up. But I don't see anything that would say that the commission couldn't do it for a year. I just think it may be better practice to only do 6-month increments because that's what the initial term of the permit is.
Commissioners, do you want to continue with the 1 year or do you want to modify your first and second?
This Commissioner Nations, I think 1 year makes sense.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any other discussion on that before we vote?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Cooper. I think 6 months, given the fact that the initial permit was 6, was appropriate. However, if the commission moves forward voting a year, I'm not going to oppose it.
Okay. Mr. Conway, Commissioner Conway, your thoughts?
I think the extension of 1 year is perfectly fine in this particular set of circumstances. Perhaps we should revisit this formally at some other time.
Okay. We have a motion with a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank you.
Administrator Schmidt, you want to move on to the next item?
Sure. We'll go back to Desert Eagle Operating LLC, the well plug and abandonment application for the well DEO 13-4. This well was drilled and recently drilled within the last few months. And the operator has decided that they wish to plug that well. So they made application to plug and provided a plugging plan. And I do believe looking at the plugging plan for the well, if I'm not mistaken, and I know Representative Desert Eagle is on the call. This well did not run into any kind of water or anything when it was drilled, but they are going to set 2 plugs with a viscous mud in between the 2 plugs. So they're setting a surface plug and 1 deeper down TD up until their 9 5/8 inch casing. So they're plugging up into that casing and then mud on top of that, and then a surface plug. And I do not see that there's any reason to believe that that's not appropriate, and it is consistent with rule. If there's any questions, I believe there's a representative here who could respond to any questions from the commission. Deidre is still on?
Hello?
Yes, there you are.
Any questions, commissioners, for Deidre?
This is Commissioner Nations. I
Go ahead.
move that we approve the plugging and abandonment application for the DEO 13-4.
Do we have a second?
This is Mike Conway. I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Administrator
Okay,
Schmidt,
all right.
move on to the next item.
Yes, so item 3 is our presentation by Brian Goatee with the Arizona Geological Survey. We certainly appreciate.
One second. I'm going to jump in and do one more thing here before Commissioner Cooper gets out of agenda, for number 6 for future agenda items.
Yes, okay.
What is of your availability for a future meeting, for a special meeting? Commissioners.
Commissioner Cooper, I can do next Friday. Or either Thursday in the next few weeks.
Does that, what about the other commissioners, Mr. Conway, Mr. Nations?
Those are fine.
Yeah, I believe I can make those work.
Okay. What date is that?
That would be
March 8th is Friday.
March 8th, yeah.
This March 7th is the Thursday, and March 14th would be the following Thursday.
March 8th. Does March 8th work for staff?
I believe that can work.
Okay. Then let's move back to Mr. Goatee's.
Okay. So item 3 would be the presentation by Mr. Brian Goatee with the Arizona Geological Survey. We certainly appreciate him being here, and he was going to talk a little bit about, I think, projects related to carbon sequestration and a couple of other things, maybe some geology related to that. But I will leave it to Mr. Goatee. I certainly appreciate you hanging in there.
Hey, thank you. Quite a ride.
This is Commissioner Nations. I'm going to have to leave.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
I've got a low battery. Thank you.
Bye, Dale.
Hi.
Well, yeah, and now I can say a lot more now that Dale's leaving. I'll probably get away with it.
Good luck.
Thank you, Dale. I should be able to share my screen, so I'll give it a try. Okay. So I'm going to start the show. Do you see a split screen or a full screen?
I see a full screen.
Yeah, I see a full screen as well, Brian.
Okay, great. Thank you. And what is a reasonable time limit here? Because I feel like we're a little over, but I don't know.
Just keep going.
Yeah, we're okay.
All right, I've got 200 slides, so it should just get through it pretty quick. Now, I might advance more quickly through a few, but the PDF of this is provided, so you can always peruse that at your own time. But I want to thank Administrator Chris for the invitation, as well as Frank for helping make space and time for us to provide this. This talk will be about a proposal that we're submitting in 2 weeks, actually less than that, to do a feasibility study or sort of a characterization of the Harquahala Basin. So before I dive into this, I'll just I'll just kind of throw up our standard AZGS mission slide for those of you who don't know us, but we've been around for a while, pre-statehood. And we've had different entities over the years. And recently, just a few years ago, we created a new team called the Basin Analysis Group, of which I take the lead on. And our role, we don't do anything new. We've been doing basin analysis for a long time. We just gave it a name. And we focus more on the efforts that we've been doing since roughly 2008, 2007, when Dale knows quite a lot about this, the Holbrook and the Cholla characterization and feasibility studies done on the Holbrook Basin. But our efforts in the Basin Analysis Group are mostly focused on the deep subsurface characterization for all of those resources that we identify, geothermal, pore space, gas storage, extraction, those kinds of things. So that's what this group does. For today, I wanted to just briefly, I'll probably go pretty quickly through the CCS process, what it is and what are the risks associated with sequestration. But feel free to ask questions during the talk. I'm fine with that. And then just some of the activities going on in the region, either active projects that we have or that we are engaged with, or proposals and plays that are going on in the state in this kind of space. And then I'll dive into the Harquahala Basin proposal. First off, the CCS just refers to carbon capture and storage. Capture can mean a lot of things, storage can mean a lot of things, but in general, the idea is to capture sources of CO2, and this can be either from directly from the air as direct air capture, in which we have two emerging technologies in Arizona that are have shovel-ready projects that are being developed, or traditional point source storage or sources such as natural gas fired power plants, coal-fired power plants. And in order to do this, in order to sequester CO2, we've been doing this for quite a while, and at least in the form of enhanced oil recovery. We've been injecting CO2 in the subsurface for almost over 40 years, or around 40 years. So we know a lot about this fluid and its the physics of its displacement and requirements for its state at a supercritical depth of about 2,600 feet or greater. We do need a seal, not always, but it's almost always required. But in some cases, you can sequester without a seal. We are looking for if there are aquifers that they are have TDS of 10,000 ppm or greater, and we're also looking for pore space and minimal geologic risk. So away from any leakage pathways or seismicity associated risks. In terms of the storage types, there can be a few. The traditional type is a deep saline aquifer where you have greater than 10,000 ppm. So in order to do that, we need to characterize what is the top and bottom of the underground safe drinking water zones. So the USDWs need to be identified. So that's one of the flip sides of being able to conduct these kinds of studies is you have to identify that boundary. And that's not only easily identified in many places. Deep depleted oil and gas reservoirs, those are definitely the case in most other states that are oil and gas rich states. We have not looked into that for Arizona. For mafic rocks, you can do rapid mineralization of CO2 in mafic rocks that are either fractured or have some kind of primary or secondary porosity. So we've got a couple of projects that are focused on that as either in situ sequestration in the deep subsurface or at the surface as ex situ sequestration, reacting it with mafic rocks to produce products. And then unconventional fractured basement is also a possibility below stacked strata. As part of these projects, if you have a CCS facility, of which there's only 2 in the U.S., but they're rapidly expanding in terms of the total volume, you need to have a monitor and reporting verification plan with EPA or any primacy package. You do need to develop these kinds of plans, and they're fairly robust. And you have to have them throughout the life cycle of a facility, which is typically 30 to 50 years, is where the planning efforts go into this. And so phase 2, 3s, and 4s require some effort of MRV planning, and that usually looks like baseline data collection is the most critical aspect of any MRV plan. Identifying leakage to either infrastructural leakage risks in pipelines, or to the USDW or other leakage pathways through faults. Any geochemical reactions that may be occurring, and infringement or migration of the plume across borders or boundaries or geologic structures. And then, of course, induced seismicity is always a function of these kinds of sites. And then you need a CO2 management plan. How do you account and verify all of the molecules going in actually stayed there for accreditation purposes? And you need an underground injection control application, class 6 well. Those are typically sought after in phase 3 and phase 4 projects, at least the way DOE structure these projects. And then, of course, you need some type of regulatory control over the pore space and the risks and the liability associated with these sites. So I'm glad to say that we're trying to participate in these activities, not just within the state of Arizona, but with our neighboring states that are all have projects that are advancing their CCS storage sites.
Brian, this is Mike Conway. I
Yeah.
gather their monitoring would, you'd monitor the site through the lifetime of that repository?
Correct. Yeah, the MRV plan has to operate throughout the life cycle and then beyond. As far as the statutes that go beyond the site life cycle, I'm not sure, when that would be. But we've had discussions with Frank and Chris and Heather and others about, who is going to be liable for these types of monitoring activities after the operator is left. So that's all the states are wrestling with those kinds of issues.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So those are the components that really, when we think about a CCS site, even if it's a phase 2 or a phase 3, we have to think about them in the geologic setting. So for the Colorado Plateau, we think of these ecosystems as, when it comes to CCS, we're talking about the CO2 sources, such as the power facilities, or it can be direct air capture. And then, of course, where to take that CO2 feedstock and then put it into the subsurface for long-term permanent storage. H2 generation is also part of this ecosystem. So you can take, methane and then split that molecule and generate hydrogen as a separate feedstock and then sequester the CO2. DAC is probably a very important part of the Colorado Plateau's future. This is why DOE funded the DAC hub in this region with Utah and New Mexico and Arizona on the hub. So that's an active project that's heavily relies on St. John's Dome and Proton Green's involvement in that. And then CO2 enhanced helium recovery was a concept that it probably won't play out, but that was the physics of this are possible. So a proposal was submitted, but it was rejected. So we just kind of left this here in the diagram. For the basin range, it's a completely different setting, and these are the aspects of what a CO2 ecosystem or a facility might look like, but it doesn't have to be this way. Again, the components are really similar. You need these CO2 sources. You need an injection well. You can have the potential for H2 gas storage in salt caverns is done throughout a few parts of the world. And it is successful. It is safe. It can be demonstrated to be safe as long as you have good characterization to back it up. And saltwater disposal is not something that we typically do, but it's something that we could consider. And then, of course, DAC is also a huge part of this landscape going forward. And sorry, that last component was geothermal looping is another possibility to consider. A lot of our basins have roughly 100 degrees centigrade at anywhere in the 8 to 10,000 foot domain, plus or minus maybe 20 degrees Celsius. This is just a regional setting leading up to Harquahala focused project, which is over here in the western central part of the state. But in other parts of the state, what we have done as far as an approach to categorize and rank basins was that we considered roughly 8 factors that if a basin was close to a source point and a pipeline and a known seal, then that basin proportionally got a higher ranking than other basins. So basins in the red colors and orange are ranked as favorable sites for further consideration, at least for feasibility and characterization studies. And these are mostly located roughly along and adjacent to the transition zone. These are the largest, deepest basins where salt is accumulated. And so that's one of the main criteria that we look for. And these criteria are put off to the right here. And the pipelines are in blue and in red. As far as active projects in the region, there are quite a few. We have the regional DOE initiative, which is known as the Carbon Utilization and Storage Partnership. That's the Western Regional Initiative, of which there's 13 states, and we're one of those states. That one's going away, and I don't know what the future of the regional initiatives are going to be. I think that they're going to get reorganized, much like West Carb and Southwest Partnership and Rocky Mountain CCS. All of those were kind of disbanded and then replaced with new regional initiatives, and now those regional initiatives are going away. But in any case, we have the DOE regional initiative still active. We have focused projects as part of that DOE initiative, and we were funded a phase 1 project to evaluate the pre-feasibility study of this basin. One we have right now is ex situ mafic mineralization that we work closely with ASU and NAU on, and that's done in 4 different parts of the state. And then there's the regional DAC hub, which I mentioned. One that just kicked off yesterday was the Four Corners Regional Initiative that New Mexico Tech is leading. And that's really focused on the St. John's as a storage site, as part of a suite of storage sites in the hub that consider Utah and New Mexico within that hub. And then we have a project with the Los Alamos National Labs to evaluate bedded salt H2 gas storage, which relies on us trying to put our core repository back together to utilize those core in the most in new ways that haven't been done before. So that's an active project. And then as far as other plays going on, there's proposals that have left the door and gone out. One for Black Mesa on Navajo and Hopi lands mostly, and then one in Red Lake. The Mohawk area is on our radar, as well as Wilcox. And then the Picacho, there's 2 areas, North and South Picacho, that we're looking at. These are not all inclusive. There are many other plays going on in the state that are not listed here. And some of them were
Ryan,
aware, some
can
were
I
not.
break in with a quick question?
Yes.
Are you guys looking at the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission's cuttings? Or are they not on the table for you folks?
Yeah, we've worked with Chris and Brooke and others to go revisit that repository, which is nice. It's still there. Looks pretty good. It's in fair shape. And So yeah, we can use that, but we can't use that for the kinds of studies that CCS requires. They're good for provenance, but you really need core to do the kinds of perm porosity tests and flushing tests that are required for these types of projects.
Yeah, but the core that the survey has is generally skeletonized and only looked at areas where there was mineralization.
Well, not only for mineralization in terms of heavy mineralization, but in terms of the basins that have salt deposits, those were of prime interest to us because that's our seal in most of the basin and range basins, and even the plateau for that matter. So for those, we do have about half a dozen cores in different places through the state, and that's great. That just saves us a lot of money, right? Instead of coring again, and most of that core has left the state. They're in other repositories because we didn't have one. So we have to go back and get that core and have it shipped, and we have some funds to do that, but it's just taking a lot of time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so with that said, I'll just kind of give you a tour of where we are with this proposal. This is a proposal that we're submitting to DOE, the National Energy Technology Labs Carbon Safe Phase 2 program, and it's part of the FOA 2711. It's a reoccurring FOA that supports all the various stages of Carbon Safe 2, 3, and 4. Carbon Safe 1 is pretty much gone, and this is the last circulation for Phase 2. They will no longer be doing Phase 2 projects. So this is a really important time for us to try and apply for this because it takes a lot of effort to do a feasibility study. So we'll be asking for the maximum amount, which is 9 million, and it requires 2.25 million in cost share for this 2-year project. And we've been able to identify the cost share, so we're good there. So we have a proposal. So that said, Harquahala is in the southwest central part of the state. It's one of the 88 Cenozoic basins in the state, and probably it's one of the top 15 largest basins by volume. The red polygon here represents the extent of the basin fill sediment below 800 meters depth that has pore space, and it's roughly 300 cubic kilometers of sediment, and I can't remember what the pore space is of that, but this is our target, is the red area. We have I-10 that runs straight across the basin west of Tonopah, which is right here, and this is the Tonopah Basin. The Cap Canal runs across it. And then we have the pipeline, the major pipelines. There's lots of offtakes in here that aren't shown. And we have 5 facilities that are natural gas-fired facilities in the vicinity of this area of interest. 4 are shown here: Mesquite, Red Hawk, Harquahala Generating Station in Arlington, and then Gila Bend is just south of here. Those 5 basins collectively provide almost 12 million metric tons of CO2. And even though their life cycle is not defined, it should be around for a while until these utilities are able to transition to cleaner fuels. So this pipeline infrastructure, the basin storage site is ideal. This point sources are ideal in that sense. So this makes this basin a sort of a critical area to look at. What we're looking for any kind of hypersaline aquifers at depth, any interbedded basalt flows in the basin fill, that's very important. Any fractured basalt, and then bedded salt deposits as a seal or for H2 storage. Geothermal gradients are obviously something that we would want to look for, but it's not the focus of this study. And the seismicity risk is very low. For our Phase 1, we had access to 5 vintage seismic lines that were processed in the early 80s. So we reprocessed all of those. And through other studies that were published and non-published, we were able to acquire those and then use all the data and integrate them to come up with basically a 3-component basin fill setup. You have in this cross section below, it's from the southwest to northeast, shown on the map above, which coincides with one of the dynamite source seismic lines. And in this profile, we can visualize here, there's a nice snippet of in the bottom right. We identify an upper basin fill that has been tested, but no wells in this basin are below 2,000 feet. So why would anyone propose a phase 2 project without any well? Well, we think it's important to do a strat test well in this basin because we saw in many of the seismic lines a pattern that we also see in the Luke Basin, which is this acoustically transparent facies, and we interpret that to be a bedded salt structure, but it has not been encountered by any existing boreholes. So our proposal is to test this feature. It is mappable, which is this hatched blue area, is this acoustic transparent zone. Given what we know about the state of Arizona and its geologic history, this is most likely a bedded salt feature. But the quality of the salt, its sort of percentage of salt versus siliciclastic components, we don't know. So we need to drill a well to test that. At first, we wanted to drill to 10,000 feet, but with $9 million on the table, that is not enough. We'd like to think that it is, but it's just not. So we reshuffled that to a 7,000 foot depth. I'm going to move on to the next slide. This was our approach. We wanted to augment the 5 existing seismic lines, which are shown in teal, with 8 new lines that are over 105 miles of new seismic that we would collect here. And this would be 2D vintage 2D reflection seismic, Vibrio source, and one small section of 3D seismic shot near the proposed stratigraphic well in the center of this feature. And we would do a full suite on this. So we have 2 chord intervals, which I'll show in the next slide. So there's core analysis required. We've got a slew of vendors lined up to do this. But we didn't have enough money. At first we tried gravity and high resolution aeromag for the whole basin, which was a really good deal. But we had to really cut everything down because it was just too much, too costly to try and collect these 2 data sets alone. So with that said, what we're proposing is to drill 1 stratigraphic test well complemented by these 8 new seismic lines. And this is our reconstructed stratigraphic column based on the surrounding geology and the seismic facies. Here are the lithologies we think are present. But again, the depth scale on the left, 2,000 feet is the deepest well in the basin. So if this is bedded salt, which we think it is, this would be our seal, and we would case off the upper portion of the hole. We'll just go ahead and drill through this, but we'll collect a core during this and then seal this, case this off, and then drill to 7,000 feet. And that will allow us to at least collect from the reservoir and the seal as part of this feasibility study. That meets the minimum requirements. And that, I think we got it down to about 5.5 million for this. And that's a hot smoking deal. So also as part of this, we do have to develop a model, which we did develop with New Mexico Tech and U of A. And we did inject 60 million metric tons in here over a 30-year life period, resulting in a plume that migrated up to the bottom of the seal and then off to the side. It's not something you'd want to see, but it's a model and it's based on hardly any data. So this is not worth the pixels printed on the screen or the ink on the paper, so to speak. It's just a model that says we have a model. Now we need to actually fill it with material that we understand beyond what we have. So, but this is the idea behind, you know, a submittal to DOE is you have to demonstrate that you've thought about these things and that you have a plan for collecting and managing the data during phase 2 and phase 3. This is our team. So we at U of A will be taking the lead. We have New Mexico Tech playing a fairly large role because they have done several of these carbon safe projects. So they're helping us out, and it's great to have them on board. Utah University is helping us with some risk and induced seismicity analysis. And then simulation and modeling, we have support from Los Alamos National Labs. And that allows us to conduct, manage the project, to do the seismic and the drilling as part of this task, risk assessment, mitigation planning, monitoring, reporting, and verification are part of phase task 4, along with underground injection control, packaging preparation. So getting ready for if things bode well for this project and the results look favorable halfway through, then we will begin applying for a phase 3 before this project's even done. And that requires us to begin developing MRV and UIC application and protocols. Feasibility assessment and modeling, that's a huge part of this. And so, and then the last part is community benefits, planning and engagement. This is a fairly large part. It's fairly new for DOE projects. Everybody's wrestling to kind of do the best job that we can. We're not social scientists, but this does require fairly heavy lifting from those experts that are really good at this. So we're relying on the U of A's Office of Societal Impact, which they created for the DOE projects, and the Justice 40 initiative that Biden administration put out 4 years ago. So we're relying on them in New Mexico Tech quite a bit to help us with that task. As far as our partners, these are the partners that are helping provide cost share to see the project forward. And that includes SRP, APS, and TEP as members of the EPRI. They've been able to help us quite a bit, and they have interest in this basin, but that doesn't mean they have interest in sequestration. So their role in this is unique from that perspective, as well as Origis Energy. Their interests are in the bedded salt storage, but they're in support of any kind of decarbonization effort. Their interests are more focused on the salt. And we have another partner here that I redacted for this talk. And then we have 2 direct air capture companies that are present in the region, and we're working with them. And they have business interests in southern Arizona as well. So this is why they're on board. And we have CarbFix as a partner out of Iceland. They've been injecting CO2 into the basalt rocks in Iceland for several years now with tremendous success and rapid mineralization. And that's using direct air capture. Okay, last.
Excuse me a second, this Commissioner Thorwald. The mineralization, I was reading an article recently where mineralization with some modifications could occur in a very short time, far less than what it does normally. And it was down to less than a week in this. Have you explored any of those new techniques that have been brought up by some of the other universities?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're doing now with NAU and ASU. So that's on the surface level for reacting CO2 with cinder cones, basically. And you can get reactions within days or a week. It's not too difficult to do. You know, a lot of you have probably seen, if you're in the field, you look at a basalt rock that someone got out of an aggregate or a quarry, and you'll see these white holes in them. And that's calcite filling in the pore space of the basalt. It's those 2 materials love each other. They're highly reactive. Washington State's had the most progress in addition to CarbFix out of Iceland. They've been able to do this and get crystallization within 3 months. And the process of mineralization in basalts actually creates new voids without compromising the integrity of the rock, like its breaking point. So it creates its own sort of porosity while it's mineralizing at the same time. So it looks like a fairly exciting way to sequester. You just have to work through the techno-economic aspects of scaling it up and not over-pressurizing your reservoir and inducing seismicity. The other attractive component of this is if you have interbedded basalt, which we do have, if you can mineralize the CO2 in that, then you're creating a seal. So now you're geomechanically kind of advancing a different kind of sealing mechanism within the basin. Okay, I'll go on to the next slide. Good question, Frank. For this site, you know, these are the communities that we have engaged with in blue. And I don't need to dwell on this too much. I will say that, you know, we have some utilities that are operating in this space. Capital Power just recently acquired the Harquahaley generating station last week. And then they operate the Arlington facility. Copia Power just announced their plans to develop 21 square miles of solar in this basin, which is a tremendous footprint. So they're providing support for this project indirectly, just a letter of support at this point. But I wanted to add them because they're fairly new to the space. Harquahaley Valley Power and Irrigation Districts, we need to do more engagement with them, but they're a pretty important part of the district. And then, you know, we've had discussions with state land. The well is on Bureau of Land Management, and they do have an internal memorandum to help advance these kinds of projects. So we're working with them closely. And SWCA is handling all the permitting for this type of project. DEQ and of course Oil and Gas Commission, and then the Governor's Office of Resiliency we've had meetings with. I think my last slide is just kind of a plug, really. This is a story map that we made. It's an interactive 3D map. So it kind of works on all these different devices, tablets and phones and a computer, and you scroll through it and it pulls up dynamic components, maps that you can zoom into and out of, move around and turn layers on and off. We built this because we recognize that outreach is missing, or at least it's needed when it comes to the concept of CCS. So we tried to address all of these components in the story map. The nice thing about it, it's never really published. It's online, so we can update it as the project progresses. So we might use this as a project-specific dedicated tool during this phase. And that's it. I just want to acknowledge just a short list of individuals and entities that have helped us get this proposal developed. We'll submit it on the 17th of March, and if awarded, we'll this is just the short list of individuals and people we get to thank. So thank you. I'll take any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Goatee?
And what's the time, if awarded the funds, when would you guys start working on this?
Award notifications come out in August. If awarded, negotiations are typically 90 days, but they can be as long as 6 months. So we don't really know. Right now, we're planning on starting February 1 of 25. And because the permitting process on BLM for a stratigraphic test well, tell me if I'm wrong, but our understanding is that 6 months is kind of a minimum amount of time to get those permits. So that means that we can't drill in the fall, in the winter, spring of 25. We would use that time to collect all the seismic, and then that will give us a little bit of a leg up on perhaps maybe where to move the well within the BLM footprint. Most likely we wouldn't need to, but that would mean we would just move the drilling off into the fall of 25.
Okay, thanks. Brian, that was a great presentation too. This is my comment.
Well, thank you, Mike. Means a lot.
Any other questions? Hearing none, let's move on to the next item on the list, our agenda today. And that is 4, and that is report by the administrator. Strangely enough, it's on CO2 sequestration and pore space update.
Yes, Commissioner Tharwell, that would be your report. So
Yes.
We did take up item B, and it would be item A would be the CO2 sequestration. So if you have anything to add, yes, thank you, Brian. It was a wonderful presentation. Enjoyed it.
Yes, very much so. We had submitted in conjunction with DEQ some legislation to define pore space. The legislature. It has not been taken up. We got it in late. I was hoping we would get it in on a strike all. It has not gotten in on any strike alls. It seems like all of the people that I talked to, they already had something that they wanted to put in on their strike all or strike everything. However, some of the strike everythings have failed now and presents a new opportunity for getting things in. In fact, there's 3 strike everythings right now that I'm going to go back and see if I can get the legislator to jump in on. But we'll see where that goes. And that's the only update I have, unless somebody's got any questions for me. Hearing none, let's move on to 6, which we've already talked about. Is there anything else that somebody would like to add to the future agenda items? Hearing none, let's move on to announcements. Is there any announcements? In that case, let's move on to item 8, adjournment. It is now 12:32, and this meeting of the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You guys have a good weekend.
Thank you. And